In a prior video, we asked you what would happen if we have Aminatou Veil Piercer out on the battlefield and we draw our first card for the turn, and that is a Meathook Massacre. Aminatou, of course, provides a miracle ability to all enchantment cards in our hand, and the miracle cost is equal to the card's mana cost reduced by 4 generic. So what is the miracle cost of Meathook Massacre? I couldn't quite get judges to really agree on this one, some judges even stating that the rules just aren't quite clear enough or defined enough to quite understand exactly what's supposed to be happening here. So maybe you can sit down with me, we'll parse out what I know so far, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this because I, by no means, am the expert. When looking at Aminatou, the wording is quite specific. Aminatou grants an ability to the enchantment cards in your hand, Miracle. Miracle is a static ability that then grants a triggered ability. What I think is important is that Aminatou doesn't appear to be giving a cost reduction, at least not in the way that we've come to expect. Cost reduction would be something similar to Rakdos Lord of Riots that says each creature spell you cast costs 1 less to cast for each 1 point of damage opponents have taken this turn. Or more simply, Cloud Key is a great example of cost reduction. Instead, Aminatou seems to be providing a formula for determining an alternative casting cost as the ability is put on the card. In that way, many people say that Aminatou certainly gives Miracle to X cost enchantments, but since X isn't a value that can be reduced by the 4 generic, the Miracle cost is just the spell's mana value, because X minus 4 black isn't really an applicable a variable, I suppose. In this way, Aminatou would not provide a way to cast Meathook Massacre for cheaper, though you could still break timing restrictions with the Miracle ability. However, there are some people and a few judges that say that this is not the case and that miracle costs can be reevaluated and recalculated while the cards are on the stack. The citation for this gets a bit odd, but the argument is that once you use the static ability for Miracle, revealing the card from your hand to then move it to the stack, the costs can then be reevaluated and recalculated during the steps to cast. And at this point, we're getting into what happens when we cast a spell. So let's refer to 601.2a and 601.2b. So to cast a spell, we first propose the cast by moving it to the stack. Next, if the spell has alternative costs, we announce intention to pay those costs. In this case, Miracle is an alternative casting cost. Later in the process, at 601.2f, a few steps down the line, we determine the total cost to cast, and this may include things like returning permanents to our hand or discarding. Cost reduction to cast would apply here in this step, and then at this point, after all of that is calculated, the casting cost is considered locked in, and then you pay it. Some say that during 601.2f, Aminatou granting Miracle equal to the spell's mana value reduced by 4 applies after we've determined what the value of X is. To back up this theory, a post made by Jess Dunks, or @Dunkatog on Twitter, is referenced. Now this tweet says that you can use the Dream Devourer, which applies a Foretell ability to each non-land card in your hand, the Foretell cost being equal to the spell's mana cost reduced by 2 generic. And you can use this to cast the Stone Coil Serpent for free, where X is 2. However, Jess also says in their Twitter profile that their tweets are not rules documents, and I can't find many rules that explicitly state why what he says here is accurate. When sifting through the rules to try to figure this out, I ran across Rule 118.9d. Now this says, if an alternative cost is being paid to cast a spell, any additional costs, cost increases, and cost reductions that affect the spell are applied to that alternative cost. A good example here would be if you're casting Finale of Revelation, blue X, and you have a Cloud Key on the battlefield reducing sorcery spells by 1. This means that you could cast Finale of Revelation where X equals 7, but because of the reduction, you only need to pay 6. Again, I come back to the fact that Aminatou is not providing a cost reduction for spells on the stack necessarily. She's providing a formula for you to determine what the ability and the alternative casting cost on the spell actually is when it's placed on the spell. I then bumped into Rule 702.1b, and this says that an effect that grants an object a keyword ability may define a variable in that ability, such as X or its keyword ability cost, based on a characteristic of that object or other information about the game's state. For these abilities, the value of that variable is constantly reevaluated. Now, the example provided here is Volcano Hellion. In the example, Volcano Hellion has Echo X, where X is equal to your life total. So in the example, if we determine that X is 10 when the ability triggers, but somehow we have 5 life when the ability resolves, then X is recalculated as 5. Now, I could see this being the rule that allows X spells and Aminatou to work. However, Volcano Hellion is searching for a variable of the game state in this example, not a cost that the player determines, and determining what X is as you cast a spell is not a product of the card or the game state, at least to my interpretation, so all of this feels, at most, incredibly flimsy. So I don't have a clean answer for you, unfortunately, but that's the beauty of these videos. If I had an answer for everything, I'd be lying. I'd simply be lying. I'm learning alongside of you. What seems most logical to me is that X cannot be reduced, and therefore you can Miracle Meat Hook Massacre for its full cost, determining X when you cast and paying that cost. Where do you land? Maybe we could get Wizards to put some more defined rulings for Miracle or more defined rulings for Aminatou on the actual card. Let me know in the comments down below. If you've made it this far, consider hitting the subscribe button, because look, you're dedicated. If you're this dedicated, then we have more videos that will happen, because that's how content works. Unless you quit. I've never done that. I'm not gonna quit. Have I convinced you? Probably. Or confused you. Either way, there's allure. Mystery. What will he do next? Tell you what he won't do. Get the answers to these rules questions.